A sex scene is a dialogue between two people, they're just not talking.
Vintage cars, dogs, children, 40 horses, and it felt massive.
And then it started raining. Yeah. Because we're in England. Yes. But we got over that. I always like to keep it very light and keep things moving. So there's a momentum and energy. I play music. I don't do too many takes. But when it comes to, sex scenes are like action scenes. You want to protect people from hurting themselves, very simply. And we have intimacy coordinators instead of, stunt coordinators. There's a long process of, Laura will write a sex scene, then we'll discuss what are the words that aren't spoken in the sex scene, because a sex scene is always a dialogue between two people, they're just not talking. Who wants what? Who's in charge? Who's leading it? When and if does that change? So once you've worked out what the story is, then you can talk about levels of nudity, and then you can go to the actors and say, this is what the sex scene is about. We're thinking of putting it in this sort of environment because we haven't seen that before, standing, sitting, whatever. And so you really involve the actor heavily and see what they're happy to do. And then on the day, like I say, you keep it light. It's a ridiculous thing to have to do. They're getting naked in front of lots of people. So you make it kind of fun, but you just get through it as quickly as possible with the least amount of takes, least amount of coverage. And everyone goes home, ideally 10 minutes early, feeling like they've filmed, some really great television. We try and be non-judgmental with all the characters, don't we? Everyone's fallible, everyone has their flaws, no one's perfect. So I think it's just about being non-judgmental, and also when you're making an episode, and the whole season is just keeping an eye on the main storyline. So we always keep one eye on the Rupert Taggie, love affair, and make sure that is being served, no matter which bed Rupert's jumping into. Unrequited. It's the best sort of love, isn't it? It is on TV anyway.
But it's so satisfying as well, because you see people that you they're meant to be together. But that's what life is like, isn't it? People can spend years in a relationship with the wrong person, but eventually you kind of hope that the universe will bring them back to the person that they're supposed to be with, and that's the game we're playing here. We were very lucky to have permission from Jilly while she was still with us, that she was very behind the idea of us being a bit cheeky with what happens in the books and allowing us to deviate from that and bring in new characters or take characters off down different paths. As you say, that decision about switching it to be Cameron who bashes Tony was about kind of what would be the most surprising and exciting thing to put in at that moment in terms of launching us into, at that time, we hoped, a second series, because we weren't sure that we would get one at that point, but we knew that we'd only done half of the book. But also it's a lot of people know those books really super duper well, and it's about letting them know that we've still got a few surprises for them. And we won't necessarily do everything the same way that the book does, but you can trust us to do it with the heart that the book has, that we will serve the characters.
Actually, it was probably in episode 2, The Big Farce, where we shot a 15 minute one-er. And that was with like 7 or 8 of our cast coming into a kitchen that had like 4 or 5 doors and larders and exits and pantries. And Laura wrote this amazing sequence that was classic farce. And, there was a dinner happening next door. We never go there. We're just in the kitchen where Sarah Stratton is pretending to cook everything, but really it's Taggie. And it was a very complicated sequence to film. We gave ourselves 3 days and we rehearsed for half a day and then we shot it in a day. So we had all this extra time. We went to a production and we went, really sorry, we're finished. We've got nothing to do. Bring some scenes into us. Because the cast and crew did a fantastic job of hitting their marks, getting the lines right. And, it was a brilliantly written and really well realised scene by the cast and crew.
One of the first days I was on set was when we were filming the huge Polo sequence in episode 1. And just walking onto that field with the castle on the top of the hill, Hampshire Hall, and this huge field and the tents that had been beautifully dressed by our designers and all of the supporting actors. Vintage cars, dogs, 40 horses, riders.
Yeah.
Everybody bringing their absolute A game, and it felt massive, and it was just walking on there and going, oh my goodness, this is Rivals. We are so back right now. Yeah. But then you had to wrangle it. I just had to stand there and admire everybody.
And then it started raining. Yeah. Because we're in England.
I really enjoy the Lizzie Rupert relationship because I think there are some really lovely surprising moments of them, they have this really beautiful and totally platonic but still extremely loving friendship. And I think they can really tell the truth to each other. And so I love it when you see them in a scene together, you know something interesting is going to come out of it because they're not going to dissemble with each other, or they can kind of see through each other's disguises. So I think I really like them. Yeah, and I also, like later in the series, there are some moments where I'm thinking of a particular scene later on between Monica and Lizzie, where it's two characters that we haven't really seen talk to each other, and they get to sit down and they have a proper big dramatic chat. And it's just sometimes with a cast like this, when you hit on a combination that you haven't really written yet, you go, oh, these two, that's really fun. I'm really enjoying writing for these two together.
Rupert was someone who, you know, we'd heard through back channels that he was a massive fan. And why wasn't he in season 1? So we're like, well, he's perfect for Rivals. Come on in. You know, they just felt very already of our world. You know, they had this kind of massive twinkle in their eye. And Hayley, particularly, she can be funny, she can be dramatic, she brings all the tools. She can
be American.
She can be American.
Which was helpful.
Which was helpful. Such good actors. And, you know, you need a little bit of everything in a show because we sort of think of it as like a chocolate box. You know, there's something for everyone in these characters and these actors. Yeah, I think it's a balance. You know, we want to be as historically accurate as possible. We sort of think of ourselves like a kind of Pride and Prejudice. It's a period show. You want to get the buttons right. You want to get the hemlines the correct height. You want to get the shoulder pads the right size. So we want to be as accurate historically as possible because if you make a period film well, it never ages. My early conversations with the wonderful Ray Holman, who did the costumes, was I always think a pitfall of 80s shows and movies. It's very easy to make a show set in the 40s, 50s or 60s or 70s look good. But you get to the 80s and it's an explosion of colour. And so it's easy for it just to look like an awful, ugly mess of colour. So it was about not suppressing the primary colours and really then choosing the moment to have those costumes pop. So obviously Cameron is someone who loves that kind of Rivals red. And so she pops on screen. So if we keep everything else in a kind of mid-tone range, then those moments really help the storytelling. So it's almost really like suppressing the 80s-ness of it, you know, and I was like, I didn't want to fall down the cliche, you know, pitfall of big shoulder pads and big hair. If someone's going to have big shoulder pads, let's investigate why. Let's not fall into cliche. So I think he's done an amazing job, Ren. And actually, when you're on set, he gets really excited about buttons. His buttons are incredible. So like, you know, on Rupert, the buttons have tiny little polo players or dogs. Or, I mean, the attention to detail is incredible. Well, for a long time, it was purely 80s. And then I was like, Jesus, I'm a little fed up with the 80s. So then we just play, you know, we sort of mix it up. We mix it up.
I often will sit and listen to a Spotify mix of the particular year. We're also really careful that we don't ever put anything in that hadn't been released yet in terms of like the timing. So there was a time when I wanted to put a particular song in, I remember, and I looked it up and I was like, oh, it wasn't released till December and this scene is set in July, so I can't have it yet, darn it. So, but we quite often will put them in the script if we have a hunch of what a good song would be. And some of those will survive. Quite often Elliot or one of the other directors will have a different idea, a better idea about another track. Sometimes we'll find that we don't get permission for a particular track and we have to try something else, don't we?
Yeah. I think you never know what's going to work in an edit. And sometimes you like to, you know, you have a kind of route one way of going, but then you just like to kind of flip it on its head. So an example, episode 10, which is a fox hunt. And we put on Ace of Spades by Motörhead. And it was great and it drove the images and there's lots of images of horses chasing dogs, chasing a fox. And it was great, but then it was just like, it's kind of what you expect. And then I started thinking like, let's put Footloose by Kenny Loggins on it. Or let's put I'm So Excited by the Pointer Sisters. And all of a sudden it felt more Rivals because it was a bit silly, but you know, the lyrics kind of worked for what they were doing. You know, they're footloose, fancy free, living life, they're excited, you know, all these things. So it's one of my favorite parts of the process is putting music on the images, and especially when you've got a show where the tone is quite hard to land upon. You know, you've got comedy, you've got drama, you've got sex, you've got action, you've got romance. It's really music often tells you how to feel and when to feel it. So it's such a fun part of the process, choosing the music.